Hello and welcome to the studio. About a year ago, I went to the Patchings Art Festival. For those of you who don't know it, it's a huge art festival in the UK where people go and buy tickets and go to loads of demonstrations, but there's also publishers, brands, representatives, and it's a chance for people to watch artists work, but also make contacts in the industry. And my publisher, Search Press, asked me to go there with them in their marquee to do a few demonstrations because it was the official launch of my book. So they wanted me to do book signings and demonstrations, talk to people. And while I was there, I met Paul, who owns Premium Art Brands. They are a distributor of big brands and they distribute Daniel Smith. And I told him that Daniel Smith was my favorite brand and that my whole book was painted with Daniel Smith watercolors. So he came to my demonstrations and he really liked it because he liked the fact that not only I was using the paints, but I also knew about the pigments, and he really likes pigments, so he was really into that. And also he really loved my book. So we had a chat afterwards and he showed me some new colors that they were releasing, and then he said, what would you think about Daniel Smith releasing the official Sandrine Maugy palette? And the idea was just wow. So we just arranged for him to get in touch with headquarters in America and suggest to them that they release my palette. And they said yes. So here we are. We have the official Daniel Smith Sandrine Maugy palette. So this is a dot card where you have loads of little dots of paints, and then the idea is people get this and they wet the dots with a brush and they can do 2 or 3 paintings with it. And they asked me to choose 18 colours, and they were very good with it. They didn't try to say you should use that colour, you should use that colour, you should use that colour. The whole idea is that they pick an artist from time to time and they say, what colours do you really love? And because it's a format that they always use the same format, the same size and the same number of dots. Instead of being my 12 essential colours, there are 18 colours on there. And that was really good because it gave me space not only to choose my 12 basic essential colours, but to add 6 other colours that I don't consider essential, but that I really love. The luxurious one to the basic essential ones. And the whole process took a year. I mean, I've been sitting on this for a year, not telling anyone about it. To be honest, because the whole time I was thinking, this is just too good to be true. Is it really gonna happen? Until I had this in my hand. I didn't really believe that the whole thing was actually gonna happen. So I waited until I actually had it and I was sure it had happened before telling people about it. And it took a year to get in, for them to get in touch with me, for us to work out the palette and then do the biography at the back, do the proofreading, checking the colours were right. And then they had to make them, which took months. I think this is the bit that fascinates me the most, is the practicality of it. The fact that in America, over there on the other side of the Atlantic, in that big factory of what is probably the biggest, but certainly the best watercolor manufacturer in the world, they printed hundreds of those things, and then someone, for weeks, 1 dot at a time out of the tubes, just put a tube of each color on each of those paper things, and it has my name on it. And I find that fascinating, and it makes me very happy. So in this video, I am gonna go through the palette and I'm gonna wet those dots and tell you what the colors are. Some of those colors you are familiar with because I've been using them, like my basic one, like Hansa Yellow Light, Hansa Yellow Deep, French Ultramarine, the ones that I use all the time. But there are a few colors on there that you might not know yet, or that I don't refer to that often. And those are the 6 extra ones that I had room to add to the dot palette. So let me show you what the Daniel Smith Sandrine Maugy palette is. Are you ready? Let's go. Let's have a look more closely at the colors. The first one is Hansa Yellow Light. It's a green bias yellow, and if you've been on Patreon for a little while, You know the one, I use it a lot. I use this as a lemon yellow, and it has the advantage over most lemon yellows that it is transparent. The second one is Hansa Yellow Deep, so also a Hansa color, but this one is orange bias, and it's one that could be used. If you don't have that one, you could have New Gamboge or Indian Yellow, and it's to mix brighter oranges and duller greens, while this one mix brighter greens and duller oranges. The third one is Nicolazo Yellow, and Nicolazo Yellow is one of those colors that is not one of my essentials. It's a golden yellow I use a lot in the autumn, but thanks to having room for 18 colors, I was able to add some of the colors that I really like, but are not necessarily essential. It's also transparent and light fast. It doesn't make bright greens, it doesn't make bright oranges, because as you can see, it's not very saturated, but it's a lovely golden yellow. Then I've got Pale Scarlet, Orange Bias Red, and then Pure Red, my mid red, and then Carmine, my Violet Bias Red. So here I've got a range of 3 reds, one that goes towards orange, one that is in the center, one that goes towards violet. And between those threes, I've got all my violets and orange mixes covered. This one will do a bright orange and a dull purple. This one will do a medium intensity orange and a medium intensity purple, because it's kind of halfway between the two. This one will make a brighter purple and a dull orange. So they're all semi-transparent and light fast. All the colors on here are single pigments and they are all light fast. That's really important. My whole palette is single pigment and light fast. Then going towards the pink, I've got Quinacridone Pink. This is what I use. I used to use Permanent Rose when I was using other brands. Daniel Smith don't have a Permanent Rose, they have a Quinacridone Pink. Transparent and light fast. And then I've got the magenta, Quinacridone Lilac. Still don't know why they call it lilac. Lilac, at least the usual lilac is not that color, but it's a beautiful paint, transparent and light fast as well. Makes lovely purples when mixed with French Ultramarine. And then Perilene Violet. Perilene Violet, that strange color, a sort of maroon, dull, dark violet that I use a lot. Not a lot of people have this on their palette, but since I've tried it the first time years and years ago, it's always been in my palette. Even when I bring it down to essentials, Perilene Violet is always there. And then Indanthrone Blue. So that's a dark blue that is not in my essential palette, but very good to mix dark greens, for example if you're painting holly or ivy, and also dark purples, like when I paint black flowers, like the black tulip on the cover of my book. I'm pretty sure I had Indanthrone Blue in there, although I cannot remember, so I can't be sure, but I do use it when I mix dark purples. French Ultramarine is an essential, is my Violet Bias Blue. And Tallow Blue Red shade is also Violet Bias, but not as Violet Bias as French Ultramarine. So when you want a very bright purple, Quinacridone Lilac and French Ultramarine are the two to mix together. However, French Ultramarine granulates, so I don't use it as often as I used to. It used to be my go-to, but now it's more Tallow Blue Red shade because I don't always want the texture. Sometimes I need smoothness more than I need brightness. Actually, I say sometimes, it's most of the time. I use Tallow Blue Red shade a lot more than I use French Ultramarine, and it is the only violet bias blue that is smooth, also transparent and light fast. And then I've got the genuine turquoise, so again not an essential, a color I've discovered very recently. I've replaced my cerulean with it because cerulean was a bit on the toxic side and I tried to use non-toxic paints. So the genuine turquoise, they didn't write it on here, but it's called Sleeping Beauty. Oh yeah, SB, I suppose that's Sleeping Beauty, SB Turquoise Genuine. And they have two turquoise genuine in the range, Daniel Smith's. One is Kingman's, one is Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty is bluer and Kingman's is greener. And I think the bluer one is more versatile. So I have both in my really big palette, but if I have to pick one of the two, I will go with Sleeping Beauty. Then I've got Tallow Green Yellow shade, pure green pigment, very saturated. I never use it on its own, but I use it as a base to mix my greens. And out of all the greens in the Daniel Smith range, this is the one that I use the most. This one is more versatile because you can lighten it with Hansa Yellow Light, or you can lighten it and dull it down with Hansa Yellow Deep. You can turn it more sort of a bronzy, some halfway between bronze and gold with Nickel Azo Yellow, or you can darken it with one of the blues and dull it down more with one of the reds. So it's a good base. And then I've got Rich Green Gold, not one of my essential, but a color I use a lot. So I use that a lot in the spring to give a sort of, I don't know, it's almost bronzy. You know, when foliage is brand new, it's not blue bias, it's more yellow bias, but it's got almost like a metallic sheen to it. And green gold is good for that, but it also is good in the autumn when the brightest of the greens start to fade and you end up with duller greens. Rich Green Gold is good with that. And then we've got Quinacridone Burnt Orange, again not one of my essential, but brilliant in the autumn. It's a rusty, somewhere between orange and brown, very saturated. It's a quinacridone pigment, they're all saturated. And then environmentally friendly brown iron oxide, so that would be the equivalent of burnt umber, but it's environmental friendly in a way that it uses the leftovers of the mining industry rather than actually mining specifically for it. And then raw umber, which is more of a green bias brown. You can see this one has got more red in it. This one has got more green in it. And that's it. That's my 18 colors. The other thing with this as well is when we started doing it, Daniel Smith, when they do these artist palettes, they go with alphabetical order for the colors. And that just completely threw me. And then when they sent me the proof for proofreading, it was all jumbled up and it was in alphabetical order. And I was like, I'm really sorry, I can't cope with this. You can't put colors in alphabetical order, it just doesn't make any sense. So the way I've done it, I've got 3 yellows, 3 reds, 3 pinks, violets, 3 blues, 3 blue-greens, and 3 browns. It kind of makes sense, you know, and if you go one after the other, they go in the right order around the color wheel. Apart from the fact that they've moved in that front blue at this end, I had it at the other end. But it doesn't really matter, that doesn't bother me as much as the alphabetical order thing. So hopefully you're going to discover a color or two with this, and then you can get them and have a play with them and let me know how you like them. And I will see you in the next video. Happy painting! Bye!